I want to start our discussion tonight by framing it around students. Because after all, students are why we are here. We want students, regardless of their race, religion, socioeconomic status, background, neighborhood, or country of origin, all of our students deserve a high-quality education that will prepare them for their future. Whether that's going to college or going to the workforce or learning a trade or going to the military or starting a business, we want our kids to be ready to do whatever it is they dream about doing. And so tonight, I'm just thrilled to have had the privilege to serve as a teacher under 3 governors who value education. And I can't tell you what it means to teachers all across Tennessee to know that for the past 20 years, we have had governors who have made education and student success a top priority. Thank you for that. So we're going to start with a lightning round of questions. And so this first question, I want you to take about 1 minute each.
We all have a little PTSD from prior debates.
So. I'm sure. But this is good. This is a friendly crowd. They are so excited to hear you. So we're going to start with Governor Bredesen. And clearly, education is something you are passionate about. Why is education important to you personally, and how did that translate to your time as governor?
I grew up with my grandmother and had an uncle living in the house with us. His name was Ozzy, who was very smart, very engaged, made good decisions, great character, somebody I admired very much. He was a milkman. I lived in the house with him and grew up to be a business person, and ultimately the governor of the state and the mayor of the city here. As near as I can tell, the main difference between the two of us is that he had to leave school in 6th grade and I got to finish high school and go on to a great college. I think that what grown-ups do is take the God-given talents that every child has and figure out how to help that child make the most they possibly can out of their lives. And in a complex society like ours today, education has got a huge role to play in making that happen. It's really important to me.
Awesome, thank you. Governor Haslam.
You know, Chrissy and I both grew up in families where our parents were the first in their families to go to college. And we saw how it changed the trajectory of their lives and therefore ours. But in my case, I had a fairly unique circumstance. I became governor in 1st of 2011. We had an extraordinary period we'd gone through in the country. We had a Republican president in George W. Bush who was really one of the first people to be talking about equity and say everybody deserves the chance for improved outcomes, and we're not going to accept that some kids can't learn somewhere. And then we had a Democrat president in Barack Obama who said, we're going to raise standards, we're going to have year-end assessments, we're going to have evaluations that tie to those assessments, even though a big part of his voter base wasn't necessarily for that third piece of that. And then we had a Democrat governor in Tennessee who had done that, had pushed some of those doors down and set us up. And people had come to us and said, listen, your role is going to be to stand in the door because there's always going to be a pushback. And the things that Governor Bredesen had accomplished for Tennessee had set us up so well, it became clear to me that was going to be kind of the thing that we should focus on.
Excellent, thank you. Governor Lee.
I've told this story a 1,000 times, but several years ago, probably now 6 or 7, well before I envisioned being in this role, I was working in an inner city at-risk youth program and met a little kid who was 13 who I became very intrigued with through a conversation. Started spending an evening a week with him for 5 years every week, and he was failing every subject in his school. And I worked with his grandmother to move him to a charter school, which I didn't even know what a charter school was. He had a tremendously different trajectory, and I suddenly became passionate about not only Adam and his future, but the hundreds of children that were in the school that he used to be in, and what it was that we were doing or not doing for them. and it started me down a path of really becoming interested in education for kids that I previously, had not had a lot of exposure to, their lack of education, and that one thing led to another, and that really started one kid, and then the kids that were in his old school developed a passion for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. These personal connections to education and why it's so important. So, Governor Lee, the next question will be for you. As David said in his opening remarks, and as we saw in the video, Tennessee has made remarkable progress over the past 10 years. You came into office with some momentum in education, and you have continued to make education a top priority. How do you view the past 10 years in education policy, and why do you think it's important for Tennessee to maintain its focus?
It's such an honor for me to be sitting here with these two men. You can imagine that. I'm kind of new to this job. These men have done an enormous amount of work in changing the trajectory of the educational system in this state. So for me to walk into this place is, I'm set up. But what I do know is that the tremendous work that was done there, it only will become accretive and or exponential, but it has the opportunity to be accretive and exponential because of 10, 15 years of work previously done, but only if we keep our foot on the gas pedal, only if we take what has been done and begin to add to it. We do have the great opportunity as a state to, I use that word accretive because we do have opportunity to rapidly increase because of the foundation that was laid previously. That's what I decided to do. I was passionate about education anyway, and then I followed up two men who had created an envious situation for most any governor. States that are very envious of what we've done. We are an education state. We all know that. Other governors know it. Other states know it. So I seized that opportunity in our first term and just said, we're going to go hard after continued change, continued choice, continued movement, and it's a really favored place that I find myself in to follow these men.
Definitely, thank you. Governor Bredesen, it was a significant wake-up call for our state when the Chamber of Commerce gave Tennessee a failing grade in education. And your leadership as governor helped guide us through that time and established your legacy as an education governor. Can you walk us through your thought process in the wake of the Chamber report and your decision to make education your primary focus as governor?
The grade we got from the Chamber of Commerce was not for the education system. It was for the truthfulness and accuracy of our reporting on the students' progress. Mm-hmm. And that really bothered me because wherever we are and whatever your views about what are the right solutions to issues in education, one thing I certainly thought we owed our students and owed their parents was an accurate, honest assessment of just where everyone was. And frankly, felt that if you had that, it would generate the momentum and the interest in beginning to try and change those things. There was a second component to that, and that right after that happened, I was meeting with a group of business people up in Northeast Tennessee, and one of them complained that they were losing a lot of their potential hirees because they had a math test they gave them and they couldn't pass the math test. Mm. So I asked them, do you mind having somebody bring over a copy of the math test? I'd like to just see the math test. And about an hour later, it showed up, and I looked at it, and the second piece of this, I said, if we are turning anybody out of our school system with a high school diploma who cannot pass this math test, we are not doing our job as adults in this in our state here. And the thing I kind of liked about it was that it wasn't ideological. You don't get into all the arguments about our charter schools better or not, and what about teachers unions or anything else. You're just saying, let's just start out by being honest about how we're doing and being clear about what our expectations are that we're measuring against, and that'll produce good results. But I think I did on my time, and certainly on the times that have followed me, I think we did a lot of things, but I don't think anything was more important than just that first step of saying, look, let's start out by just being honest about this and clear with everybody about just where we are.
Definitely, thank you. Governor Haslam, when you came into office in 2011, Tennessee had just put in place many strong education policies and was truly just beginning the hard work of education transformation process in our schools and classrooms. You championed that work during your time as governor, and Tennessee became the fastest improving state in the nation. In your opinion, what led us there?
Well, and I'm not just saying this because he's here, but you can't underestimate or overstate how important it was what Governor Bredesen did with what he said, we're going to be honest, and we're going to talk about outcomes, okay, which was really important. And the statistic I always tell people, at the time we came, like a year after I came into office, I was talking with one of our community college presidents. They said in Tennessee, 70% of our kids that come to our community colleges need remedial work when they get here, 70. At the same time, we were saying 70% of our kids were proficient at grade level. Okay, there's just no way both of those are true. So Governor Bredesen kicked that ball off, and we really, it's a lot easier to steer a moving car. And so we got a lot of credit, and we had people like, I think I see Patrick Smith back there, and Kevin, and then Candace who came in and just said, well, we're not going to accept that some kids, some places can have better outcomes. And for us, it just felt like, I hate to say it kind of felt like the most natural thing in the world given where we found ourselves at that time.
Definitely, thank you. Governor Lee, this one's for you. Education is one of the few policy areas that directly impacts almost every other policy area. Health, economic development, and even national security, just to name a few. What is your view on how we can continue to drive collaboration between sectors to make Tennessee the top state in the South for health, education, and economic success? And I'm going to bring that to both of y'all, so I hope you're listening.
When I've campaigned for 2 years, I went around saying people want a good job and a good school for their kid in a safe neighborhood. And that's what really matters to Tennesseans. And if you pressed me on that, I would say, if everyone had a good education, if everyone had a good school, then they'd probably get a good job, and they probably would not engage in the criminal justice system, so we'd have safe neighborhoods. The truth is that they're very interconnected, and education is the first link in that chain. So if we want to impact economic prosperity or health outcomes or public safety, then we ought to impact the way our kids learn. It's part of the reason that I have said in the very first, I was talking to David earlier about my first SCORE event was a education forum in January of 2018, and I was horrified. And I walked out of the stage, but I remember saying one of the things that I really wanted to get across was, it's not so much the kind of school, the particular, whether it's charter or public or other alternatives, it isn't that so much as it is that we are committed to quality education, that kids get a quality education in this state. So I am one who likes to challenge. I did this in my business. Most of you who are in business do this. You're constantly in a continuous improvement process, which means, in my view, that you ought to be trying new things all the time. And it's part of the reason we did some of the things we did this year with Give Act, for example, and really taking what was there and realizing, hey, we could do better with vocational and technical and ag education. That's background I have, and why don't we invest there? and double down and strengthen up choices for parents. And by the way, the man who led our prayer tonight, John DeBerry, it's already been recognized as a force for kids. But I just want to shout out, because he's here, he had a lot to do with our ability to get a lot of some really strong things done this year. Working with the legislature and those who recognize and are advocates for kids, not for politics, is really how we get things done. So they are very interconnected, and we need to remember that at the very core of that is teaching our kids.
Governor Bredesen, how can we continue to drive collaboration between sectors to make Tennessee the top state in the South for health, education, and economic success?
I think one of the really important things is something that Governor Haslam touched on and did, and Governor Lee has just mentioned, and that is, we're tending these days to sort of politicize every issue, unfortunately, and I think one of the things Tennessee has done very well is to keep education out of that particular world. The stuff that I proposed was certainly not out of the Democratic playbook or the Republican playbook or anything else. Governor Haslam, took that stuff and made it his own. It was not just a case of following on, but certainly didn't say, well, I'm from the other party following Phil, and we're going to move now off in this direction. And Governor Lee, as from what I can tell, kept the same kind of set of attitudes. And I think that taking this out of the political realm and just having governor after governor who bends their own, work toward trying to make the system better, working within a playbook which is sort of similar across different administrations. That's what it's really going to take to realize the enormous potential. I think we've got to have just a very first-class education system here in our state. It's that continuity over time that'll make it work.
Definitely. Governor Haslam, what are your thoughts? How do we continue to drive collaboration between sectors in Tennessee?
Well, I think you always try to start with the end in mind, and we know certain things. We know that the workforce of today and tomorrow requires a lot more specific training than we need to. I still remember, you probably don't remember this, but I remember you talking about the first time you visited Volkswagen in Germany, and you came away struck with, it doesn't take many people to make a car, but they better be pretty smart.
Yeah.
And that was and I remember thinking that, and when I'd visit plants, I would think the same. It hit me. So it became quickly apparent, if we're going to compete, we have to make certain that we're those folks with the trained workforce. And, of the big issues in the country today, one of the biggest is economic inequality. Just forget where you are on the political spectrum. That's just a fact, okay? That's just what the numbers tell us. And there's a lot of solutions about what we're going to do with it, but I think the only one that really, really is going to move the needle is public education. It's just all the other things, I don't think the math works. And this one, it does. And so it's been, I think you started with a problem-solving governor. You have one now. And we have people that are focused on, okay, what our issue is trying to make certain people are prepared. Well, what do? Well, make sure they have more post-secondary opportunity, and then make certain they're prepared when they get there. And everybody needs to see the link.
Sure. Thank you. So Governor Haslam, this next one is for you to start. As you all know, there are a lot of advocates in the room tonight, educators, parents, community leaders, just to name a few. We know the power of advocates using their voices from all over the state to keep education at the forefront and to elevate important issues. What advice would you give the advocates in the room tonight on how best to engage policymakers and ways to positively impact our state?
I am preaching to a choir here, but my first if I could just emphasize anything, is don't give up.
Yeah.
This is really, really hard stuff, okay? And everybody's nodding their head and laughing because it really is. And there's just a lot of people that have a vested interest in not seeing things change. And one of the privileges of being governor, and I know that Bill and Phil would agree with me, is you get to see so many different people from different perspectives. And even in this room, I'm wanting to go, oh, I wonder if she knows him. Because you see all these people that are just incredibly committed to better outcomes and better results. And my message is don't give up. It is what has happened in Tennessee is a result of a whole lot of people in this room and a lot of people that aren't here And we have a real tangible process to show for it, but it's really, really hard. There's a lot of people working against you, but I don't know of a more important battle than this one.
Governor Lee, what advice would you give to advocates in the room?
I first want to say this organization, SCORE, is a very unique arrangement. Dr. Frist and I were talking earlier about what it would be like to have a SCORE for healthcare, or what would it be like to have a SCORE for other issues, because it is a very unique setup in that we have an organization that's outside of the abilities that we have in state government to really impact policy and to advocate and to bring about real change, to bring in philanthropists, to bring in business leaders, to bring in teachers and thought leaders and parents. And it is a powerful thing when you can advocate with strength, as is done with this organization, outside of government. And so my encouragement is to build upon that. It's to build upon what has been done in the last 10 years. Use that as a framework. Do the same thing that I'm doing, which is, walk into a situation that's in really good shape, and then decide you're going to put your foot on the gas and make it even better, improve on it in ways that you alone can. Your advocates, your activists for education, you need to be, because as Governor Haslam said, there are activists for the status quo, and they are active. Yeah. And you are a moving force beyond that. So build upon what you have and continue to advocate for kids.
Governor Bredesen, what advice for
I agree with both Governor Lee and Governor Haslam about what you said. I'd like to take my time to maybe throw a challenge out to the advocacy community. It was enormously influential, in the things that I was trying to do. But I also think it's easy sometimes to just kind of fall back on beating the drum for the same old thing over and over and trying to put pressure on political figures. And I can assure you that if you're governor or a state legislator, you are very used to being pushed from all sides and fairly immune to it. Because of that, what I always found I was thirsting for was some fresh ideas. You have in the advocacy community, it's a much more diverse community than exists in the Department of Education or the governor's staff or the legislature in backgrounds. And I think there's a real opportunity in the advocacy community to really come up with some ideas that would really be helpful to Governor Lee in accomplishing the things that he is clearly committed to accomplishing, to bring some fresh perspective and fresh thoughts into it.
Thank you all so much for being here tonight. We're going to have one final question. And for our final question, in education, we know the work is never done until every child graduates high school ready for their future. While we've made tremendous progress as a state, we have a long way to go. And so all three of you have this visionary leadership. What is next in Tennessee education in order to ensure that we can continue to move forward and improve education for all students? What's next? We'll start with Governor Bredesen.
I would just echo what these two governors have said. I think the most important thing is to pick a course and stick with it over a period of time. I mean, if you look at a very successful company, an Apple or a Microsoft, every time they get a new CEO, they don't go pinging off in some entirely new direction and some entirely new strategy. There's a kind of an underlying strategy and thrust to what they're about. And I think Tennessee has that. And I think all three of us have worked hard to try to instill in the people of Tennessee a belief in what it is that we're trying to accomplish with education and support for it. So I think the most important thing is to everybody take and fix the problems that came before. I mean, Governor Haslam fixed some stuff that I didn't get exactly right, and I'm sure Governor Lee will do the same, and you put your own mark on it. But having an underlying strategy and sticking with it and making it work over 20 and 30 years is going to make a huge difference in education. And I think would make us all very, very proud of where we get to.
Very well said. Here's what I would make certain that everybody in this room knows this, but the world's changed a lot in the last 5 or 6 years. Number one, there was nothing at all discussed about education in the entire 2016 presidential campaign. All the Republican primary debates and the general election, other than maybe the argument about free college, there was nothing, okay? This one, it'll be the same way. I wish it wouldn't, but the Democrat debates, you don't hear, and you won't in the general election. There's another thing that's changed. The law of the land has changed. We're no longer under No Child Left Behind. It's now ESSA. And the difference is this: we no longer have the federal boogeyman who we could use to say, if we don't do this, we will lose fill in the blank. Now, as somebody who believes in letting states to make more decisions, philosophically, I agree with that. But we have to remember, we don't have the feds anymore to say, if you don't do this, you're going to lose funding. That doesn't happen anymore. So what it means is there's way more responsibility and pressure on the states and on our local school boards. And we have to remember that. The truth is, and again, as I can say this because I'm not in office anymore, as a Republican, you probably shouldn't say it, but we made a lot of progress because Governor Bredesen said, the federal government's telling us we have to do this, okay? And we don't have that anymore. Again, philosophically, I think that's a really good thing, but it just means it's up to us to make those hard calls and to make certain the right people elected to school boards and to make certain we have great people in the State Department who are continuing to emphasize the right things. And I think that's what everybody in this room is about.
I may have even invented a couple of those.
I think that change is important to note. The responsibility does fall on the states. That's a good thing. It's the reason federal candidates don't talk about it. And I oftentimes, because I haven't been away from business long enough to forget about it, but I think about how it is that we would try to advance something in our company. So give me a second to sort of develop this, but public education is the foundational, it is the way our kids are going to be taught for the vast majority of children in Tennessee. We have to remind ourselves that no matter what we do, whether it's public charter, whether it's choices, whether it's ESAs, whatever things that we might believe will give us some really strong insight and give us some best practices, all of that has to be done because it's going to have a positive impact on public school systems all over the state. When I was trying to push something forward in our business, the primary objective I had was, how do I get the rank and file of every single person in this company to believe and to understand that I'm actually for the betterment of every person in the company and the good of the company. I think because it becomes our responsibility, I have a job along with the advocacy group of reminding public school teachers, school boards, school superintendents that we together collectively have this responsibility to move the needle forward. We have to work together. We're not pitting ourselves one against the other or politically or this kind of school versus that kind of school. We have a responsibility to speak a message that says Tennessee can be a leader in education in America, but only if we come together and take the responsibility as a state to advance public education in Tennessee. That's a very difficult job, I've already learned, but we're excited about the prospect of doing that, of convening the entire group of stakeholders and setting a vision for Tennessee to be a leader in the country and getting people on board to join with us in that. I think we can do it because we have started that ball rolling, and it is much easier to steer a car or push a ball that's already rolling, and we can get it moving quickly. So, thank you,
Governor Bredesen, Governor Haslam, Governor Lee. Thank you for a thoughtful discussion tonight, and thank you for your leadership. Please join me in a round of applause.
For changes like what's happened in Tennessee over the past 10 years to occur, there have to be so many people who dedicate and commit their life or portions of their life to this work. The three governors who are up here are an amazing example for all of us to see and to be able to be a part of a much larger story. And to all of you in the room, thank you for everything that you do. Across these journeys, consistency is so important. And I think one of the amazing things that Bill Frist has done over these past 10 or 12 years is provide that kind of consistency for the state and for all of us. I just want to tell one really quick story about Senator Frist. So when we were starting SCORE, one of the really big debates was, hey, you want to bring together Republicans and Democrats and charter schools and teachers unions, but will people really all agree to a common agenda? And there were a lot of people in the state who said, that's impossible, that'll never happen. And I remember going to Senator Frist and saying, kind of, what are we going to do about this? And he said, for real change to occur, it has to happen over decades. Interesting, 10 years. But it has to happen over decades, and you really have to have everybody on board. And I think the vision that he had in that early moment to understand what it would take to make real change is really remarkable. And for me, it's just a huge honor to have been a very, very small piece of that. And I couldn't have been more lucky than to have Jamie Woodson follow me. I can't believe we got her to leave the state senate to do that, but we were so lucky. And I'll let Jamie make a few comments.
Thank you, Brad. You had awfully big shoes to fill. Thank you for what you created, and we're such an important part of. It's a real privilege to be on the stage with these two leaders who are dedicating their personal and professional lives to advancing this important mission, but it's particularly wonderful to honor Senator Bill Frist. What a privilege it's been to work closely with him and the SCORE team through this last decade. It literally seems like yesterday when Senator Frist and Brad were in my office and Senator Frist asked, what if? What if every child in Tennessee had the opportunity for a great public education? What if every single child in Tennessee had the opportunity to participate in American society successfully? What if? And it was just 2 years later in 2011 when he asked me another what if. What if, of all the things you could spend your time doing, you focused 100% of your time helping us advance this mission, this generational work to ensure that every single child in our great state has opportunity? And it caused a whole lot of changes for myself and my family, and what a bright season it's been. So I want to thank Senator Frist for his leadership. I'm just thankful that he asked questions like, what if? It's led to historic changes for children, and I'm really excited about the next 10 years and what will be accomplished. Senator Frist, thank you for your vision. Thank you for asking what if, and thank you for your servant leadership. It is a gift to get to work with you.
Thank you, Jamie. It is coming into this role this year. There's very big shoes to fill coming after Brad and Jamie. Very grateful that both are friends and mentors and colleagues. I just want to tell two kind of final quick stories about Senator Frist. In the period between when Brad left SCORE and when Jamie came to SCORE, there was a very difficult decision we had to make organizationally about a certain policy where we were trying to decide if we were going to get involved in advocating for that policy or not. And it had political ramifications and all these other things that we were trying to make a decision about. And I remember having a conversation with Senator Frist and asking him his opinion about what we should do. And I went through probably 20 minutes of rationale for different sides and why to do one side or the other side. And the simple question that he asked back to me was, is this good for kids? Very simple. Is this good for kids? And I think as we think about where we go next in education, that's a very important question to never lose sight of. And Senator Frist, I want to thank you for putting that question front and center. And then the second question is about really some issues that we've wrestled with, policy issues we've wrestled with more recently, and having the same set of questions with Senator Frist about whether we get engaged or not and what our engagement looks like. And the simple question he asked back was, do we have this ability, would we have an ability to make this better for students? And I think those two questions, is this good for kids? Do we have the ability as advocates to make this better for students? What better questions to guide our work than those two questions? And so, Senator Frist, I want to thank you for your mentorship and your leadership and your vision for this organization and this work. As a small token of our appreciation, we've actually reprinted the very first article in the Tennessean in 2009, announcing the creation of SCORE, and we hope you'll look at this and remember how far we've come, how much work we have left to do, and the work and really the vision and partnership with many, many, many partners in Tennessee that you have created. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Senator Bill Frist.
Governor Lee caught it, I think, when he said, really in his closing comments, when he said, "we." And it is the we. And the we is the governors who spoke tonight. But equally important, and I'll say more importantly, it is all of us, meaning you, who sit here tonight. 200 people who over the course of the last 10 years have contributed, each in your own way. And I'm speaking to everybody, the spouses who are here, the family members who are here as well, to capture a hope and a dream and a reality that was made possible by the three people who just were on the stage and presented that nice, really celebratory award to me. I do want to thank the governors, just to open up, and I'm going to be very brief tonight, but thank the governors for their leadership, that passing of the baton. One to the other, accelerating, amplifying, increasing that hope and that vision and that dream that started not really with us, but with the 30 or 4 people part of that steering committee, the 15 or so initial board members, and then supported by people in all 95 counties of this state. I'm tremendously proud of the initial idea of SCORE, but more importantly, how SCORE and our many partners have stayed on what was opened also tonight, and that is we're student-centered. Everything starts with a story. Everything starts with that individual young person whose life could go in many, many directions, but we know in a more powerful, more robust direction with appropriate education, a student-focused education policy. All of you have welcomed important changes, and again, I appreciate people mentioning change and thinking out of the box and thinking differently, at the same time preserving the past and the legacy that was given us, that SCORE is regarded as part of the centering sort of core values that we take forward. It's the hard work by not the policymakers so much, because that in some ways is the easy part. It is by people who are sitting in this room today and who you represent in your districts, in your schools, in community activities, and the advocacy efforts that you undertake. It's that hard work that has contributed to those significant gains. Again, we've gotten sort of halfway, only halfway where we need to be, and we want to celebrate that climb and those metrics and that fact that we're doing much, much better than we were 10 or 15 years ago, but recognize we're only halfway there. It's why leaderships like this are what change the course of history. It's not the politicians, it's not the former politicians, it's not individuals, it's collectivity, it's alignment around goals, it's collaboration, it's bringing diversity to the table, and out of that diversity, finding a richness to move forward. And that's what SCORE does. The current generation of kids is going to be the first generation that's not going to live as long as their parents. I mean, who would have ever thought with advancing science and the great hospitals and the great things that we have out there today and the heart transplants that people born today aren't going to live as long as their parents? There are lots of things that we can tinker with, but there's only one remedy. So when I look at the divisions in America today, and I look at the well-being of individuals and our health, which is declining in this country, there's only one fundamental central organizing core, and that's you. It's education. It's student-focused education. Real people coming together have done what no other state has done, but we're only halfway there. The challenges before us are equal to where we started 10 years ago, and we need to go, and we will go by staying focused for another 10 years in that regard. So in closing, I'm grateful to each and every one of you for contributing in so many ways to drive forward, to improve education on all fronts for students in Tennessee. And it is the students, it is the parents, it is the advocates, it is the legislators, it is the community leaders, it is the nonprofit leaders, it is the three governors who are with us, it is our generous funders who are also in the room today that make this work possible, and I thank all of you. Let's leave tonight really appreciating the past, cherishing the past, but recommitting tonight to continue that same trajectory that we've set over the last 10 years. And our goal is to provide that high-quality education for every Tennessean and ensuring that every single Tennessean is ready for successful careers and prepared for those careers and for life. Thank you, and I appreciate everything each and every one of you have done. Thank you.